allow me to do that. Well, here we are, March 2022 at a new meeting of Membership Minds. Welcome everybody, and thanks for joining. And just before we started the recording, we were talking to Sandra about her new position, and I like the conversation because I just hit 2 years at FMI, and that going through that whole process of going through the membership cycle, once or twice to really get a good feel for it, and then and all the hiccups. But to me, it's like that first year, I always went, whatever I got into for whatever organization, I said, let's do it the way we've done it, just to see how it works. And as we did that, making tons of notes about, okay, we're going to need to change that. Some of it can be changed on the fly, but for the most part, it's like we have to change all the messaging here, and we have to change the timing, and those things you can't just do it on the fly a lot of times. So
agreed.
Yeah. so it's a position that's really overwhelming to be in. No matter what position it is, it's really just a situation that you're going to get overwhelmed for a while. And so it's just about what you absorb and take lots of notes. Right.
I spend my evenings deciphering all the notes from the day and trying to put them in categories so I can reference them back later, because it's
right.
I've been taking copious notes.
Wow, excellent. Well, congratulations. I know that was a long haul to
yeah, it was.
to that position. So
but they were worth the wait.
There you go. See, and that's usually what I hear everyone say, if they were looking for the right thing and that they finally found their work soulmate, something, I don't know.
So far, so good.
Right. So speaking of soulmates, hey, Scott, how's it going? No, not really. I don't know.
Oh, that's fine, Dan. I appreciate that, the closeness.
Everything
is going well out here on the West Coast.
Good. Yeah, and things are somewhat getting back to normal from what I can feel on my end. I actually went to my first event a couple weeks ago in Vegas, and I walked into their general session. There's a couple thousand people in there actually, and walked right in there with my mask on, and I was the only one wearing a mask. it was a little strange, and my colleague showed up next to me, walked in right next to me, and I didn't know he was there, but he walked in and he had a mask on too. We kind of looked at each other like, I guess it's safe. So, and everything went really well. No news about it being a super spreader or anything like that. So yeah, it feels somewhat normal to be at an event like that.
Did they have like any distancing or show vaccination or any kind of place?
Yeah, there was kind of the pre-registration where you had to walk up and show proof of vaccination or test, and they gave you a bracelet, like you're entering an amusement park, and we had to wear that for all 3 days, which was pretty annoying. I mean, being at a business event for 3 days, and you have to sleep and shower and everything with this bracelet on, and not take it off until the end of the event. So that was kind of strange to me, but I understood why, and I'm not sure many people really checked them going into sessions or walking around or even talking to each other, in small groups. So I don't know. I guess it's just another component of the protocols these days for these events and meetings going forward. So
yeah, our conference is not until November, so it'll be interesting, and we are full steam ahead in person in Denver. But I'm from the DC area, and everyone here, I'm in Montgomery County, Maryland, and everybody's super mask compliant and highly vaccinated, and there's no mask mandate right now in Montgomery County, but I went to the store the other day and everybody still wears them. And so I think when you get out of this area, you kind of forget. You're like, oh, wait, we look like for wearing a mask.
Yeah, well, and I wear my mask wherever I feel I need to. And, and there were many times during that event that I did wear it, and no one said anything. And some folk, there was others that put theirs on as well. But for the most part, it was, and again, Vegas, I was around a lot of people, and it was packed. There was actually a half marathon the day that the event started, so there was people everywhere. And going to another event this next week in Kansas, or Overland Park, Kansas. And then after that, we have our event in Orlando, which we were supposed to have in January, but we paused and we hit play again, and it's going to happen in Orlando at the very end of this month. So looking forward to that, but we have lots of protocols in place there too. And, knowing Florida, I think I'll probably wear my mask a little bit more there than, than maybe other locations. But yeah, membership wise, I want to get back to that. Basically, I don't know, did any of you attend yesterday's Membership Monday with ASAE?
No, that came from, I think, I can't remember. There was some thread on Collaborate and everyone,
Yeah.
like, great ideas. These are great ideas. So we all got on there, but so I was on the very first before it officially became Membership Mondays.
Oh,
And
okay.
it was kind of large though, so you lose.
It
you-
was a lot of information. Yeah.
I don't know how yesterday was, but I couldn't attend yesterday, but I was
Yeah.
kind of like, I'd rather go to Tuesday's call.
There were a
Yeah.
lot of people
Thanks,
on
Sharon.
there. Yeah, there were over 100 people on there.
Yeah,
At the first
it was a lot.
one, there were only 30, but that was very impromptu.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So yeah, I would, and it's funny because at the first one, I got tagged in that conversation because the conversation started because it's like, how do you engage new members? And
Mhm.
I had posted that we do a Membership Monday
Yeah.
for the benefits, and somebody on the first one, they're like, oh, we really like that name. And then when they did it, I kind of laughed at it. And I'm like, okay, really? I guess a flattery, is this
Yeah. Yeah.
the sincerest form of flattery, right?
Right. I feel flattered from what we've been doing here every month. That
I
they're
know.
doing
And that's the
same
whole
thing.
thing. It's like
So.
Tuesdays are hard for me because I used to come all the time. And then we're going
Yeah.
through an AMS
Oof.
transition, and our meetings with the new AMS is on Tuesdays. And I'm like, really?
Yeah.
So yeah, so I was happy that they changed the time of the AMS so I could be here.
Oh, good. Good. I'm glad to hear that. And what AMS did you convert, or are you converting to?
We had NetForum, Avila, and we're going to Nimble,
Mm-hmm. Got it.
which yeah.
Yeah, right, exactly. And I worked in Avila back at for about a year in an association, and it was pretty good, but I could see its limitations, and but what AMS doesn't have limitations.
Right. Yeah,
And,
we've been in the discovery process through the implementation for, I think we're going on month 17 now.
oof.
Wow.
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 It's
Yeah.
been very arduous because the person that was in charge didn't quite have everything lined up. And so we had a lot of difficulties getting to where we are now.
Ugh. Yeah. Yeah, I'm sure there's been nightmare scenarios around that as well.
Yeah.
Sandra, what you mentioned that they brought in a new AMS at your new organization.
Yeah, I'm really excited. They went with the Microsoft environment. They're all in, and I have to tell you that we all use Microsoft every day, from SharePoint and OneDrive.
Yeah.
And I've never used MS Planner and Project, but I switched over from Asana and Trello user because I'm new and I can switch to anything.
Sure.
And it is so easy to
Really?
have everything be, it's very intuitive. If you set up the architecture, it connects the dots. I'm learning from the system how quickly it connects dots. So we have a ProTech AMS, and it is, from what I can tell, super fit. I mean, I'm not running reports or anything like that, and I'm not. But it's just like Salesforce. I hope that's not sacrilegious to say, but that made me very happy because I love the functionality.
Yeah, is it a CRM that you're
Mhm.
using? Okay, got it. So the Microsoft Dynamics
Well,
CRM or what?
It's Azure, but that Pro Tech wrote a associate management package to run. It's just like all the Fontiva and Nimble writing sales association management packets on top of Salesforce.
Okay,
Same principle. It's a CRM base, which is Microsoft, but then it's got all the functionality for dues and committee and volunteers, and it's you're all in. So if you buy,
Mhm.
that's why it's a little pricey, but once you buy, everything that they have comes with the system. So event
Yeah.
planning, sponsorship, advertising. I
That's
haven't
yeah,
even looked at all of that stuff yet.
yeah, that's great. That's great. So yeah, and yeah, I know Salesforce is kind of underneath a lot of these systems. So
So far, so
well,
good.
yeah, good, good, good. Yeah, I hear that. Hi, Renee, welcome. I'm glad that you can make it this month.
Well, I couldn't get in last month. Darn.
Yeah, sorry that
That's
again,
okay.
that was
Anyway, sorry about that. Running a little late in the board meeting over there. So
okay. So what's anything on the top of your minds keeping up at night as far as membership for any of you? I know the engagement part is something, as we were talking about the ASE's event yesterday, that there's over 100 folks and they were all wanting to know more about engagement and trying to they went through the whole range of different topics. They were talking about timing as far as renewal notices and things like that. They also talked about voicemail drops, which I've never tried that, but it sounds like it's worth looking into. I have to say though, when I've talked to my members and I actually get in touch with them, I say, well, I left many voicemails. Most of them are like, yeah, I never check voicemail, or I just delete those. so it's like, I'm not sure how effective voicemails are anymore, and than any other communication. But engagement wise, I think that's always critical. I know I have a few renewals that folks have come back and said, we're not going to renew this year. And it's most likely because they weren't as engaged as they could be in the organization. So it's, I always hate seeing that, but I also know that we just can't keep up with all the members at, every single day or every single month. So it's a tough thing to swallow or just
it is.
accept.
I agree with you, Dan, because we are very much an engagement kind of group. Everything's done by handshakes and stuff.
Yeah.
And I'm losing people to two things. One is, yeah, we didn't do a whole lot last year. And there's I guess a bit of a lethargy that goes with that, right? Because up here we've been, hammered with all kinds of restrictions and things and so on. But having said that, now I'm getting people who at the beginning of the pandemic said, adios. Now they're coming back. Right.
Yeah.
So everything in its cycle.
Right.
And I always try to make sure that whatever happens, we kind of like leave one another on a solid, happy footing. Right.
Right. That's a good point. That's a really good point, Renee. Yeah, because as those transitions away, you want to make sure that those bridges aren't burned in any way.
Exactly.
That it's safe for them to come back and actually are encouraged to do that. So
that's what we've been doing. Even though there are restrictions on membership, it's not always a guarantee you can come back. But having said that, I mean, there's also an enthusiasm for certain things. So my big expo that I do every year, it's a trade show. I mean, it's when's it happening? When's it? I'm ready. So kind of interesting. But there are still people who are like, yes, I want to come to events, but I don't know how big I want that event to be. Right. So we just had a home show, for instance, and it was quite well attended. But certainly not the numbers of years past, right? So I think slowly we're all kind of getting just used to things. So our mandate, for instance, for membership, we're going to try and do more, but not necessarily big.
Got it.
So keeping things midway.
Yeah.
And
no, let's say it's for like, we've had a lot of people say, "Ah, I just couldn't do as much as I wanted. I wasn't able to take advantage."
Right.
Because, and even with trying to get volunteers, because the last 2 years, just so much other stuff, in their personal lives, it's just so taxing and tiring.
Mhm.
They're just basically keeping their head above water. So they've dropped off. We've always had some like people who have expired like 5, 8 years ago come back, and we're definitely seeing more of that. So yeah, that's kind of interesting. And then we did a virtual conference the last 2 years, and this past was great. Numbers wise, it's of course not the same in person, and we're going to be in person this fall. So I will be interested to see the numbers. Our members are medical writers, so they were all like, the last 2 years, they were like, no, we have no interest in meeting up in person. We're still doing virtual. They were like, no, no, no.
Really? Wow.
Well, they're medical writers, they're scientists, they're
Ah,
physicians, they're, they
I guess it would,
write-
yeah, no, see, for us, construction's very personal, right? Everybody wants to
Yeah.
be chit-chatting and talking and so
Yeah.
on. And even though they may not necessarily want the biggest groups, they certainly want the interaction. And I've noticed that in our group or in construction, the few things that are going hybrid are education, certainly not social events. I mean, I don't know about you guys, but the last social virtual event I had, 4 people showed up.
Oh, wow.
That's it.
Yeah.
So,
our chapters have been doing it, but they want to see each other. It's just they're all medical professionals, so they're like, heck,
right.
the standpoint. I think by November we should be okay. Our chapters do a lot of conferences in the spring, and they're all virtual because when
Wow.
they weren't quite sure, so they just planned virtual, which makes sense. So it'll be interesting to see. I mean, and just the habit, like for me personally, like I walked into a restaurant in Charlottesville this weekend. I was like, oh, I don't have my mask. And the guy's like, we don't have a mask mandate. I'm like, and it's weird, like getting used to that again in this area anyways.
Yeah. I've noticed also, at least with our event, they're very eager to get back to in person, very much like Renee's home builders. But I've also noticed that they are not sending the amount of people or the teams that they used to. They're only sending the real, the real decision makers or the folks that really desperately need to be in front of the other folks. And so that's, our attendance is great, and it's not like we're hurting as far as attendance, but when it comes to representation by company, it's just, a few people rather than an entire team. And it's interesting to see that. I mean, we're doing that as well. The staff that we're sending to our own event is not the size that it used to be. We're only sending, those that we have to send, and then, we're absorbing other responsibilities of those that might have been attending that aren't. So it's interesting that it's kind of become very more lean, and only the folks that need to be there are there, and that hopefully will make it a more valuable event. That there's, when you're talking to someone, you're talking to decision makers, and so. So that should really be interesting to see. I've never been to our event before, so other than the virtual side of things. So it would be interesting to see how that dynamic plays out. Yeah, Sandra.
We don't have electronic raise your hand, so I'm curious what you and Renee were saying, and Sharon is planning. I'm in the same boat as Sharon. If you planned tracks of educational programming, okay, for specific titles within the company, do you think that would help increase attendance, or you think it's a sheer budgeting where only the C-suite is coming and it doesn't matter how great the programming is?
Our programming doesn't work that way, unfortunately, because the way licensing and education goes, it's usually that the upper levels don't need any of it. That's why they have lower levels.
Mm-hmm.
So
okay.
Yeah.
So that's a separate educational program altogether. We just haven't gotten together in so long, like everyone else. So I was thinking, okay, well, instead of having, relate, we're not doing anything till the fall. And so not trying to put 4 different conferences in the fall for the, for legal, for safety, for the different divisions. Let's put it all under one roof, have educational programming. So each education meeting room is 50, 60 people. They can still network, but the whole event, I'd like to see it, instead of being 100 for just the CEOs, to see it be more like 250, 300.
Hmm.
But
Yeah.
maybe I'm just trying to fight city,
Well, I think, it makes sense to start experimenting or, looking at different different perspectives on how you, do the education, but also the social events, obviously, like Renee, I'm sure you're looking at different ideas there too, to figure out, well, why didn't that work, or how can we just make it better? But I also I kind of like the idea of having, smaller attended events, and more of them. Yet I know that's kind of expensive and time
Yeah.
consuming too.
And also, Dan, you got to think about the impact it's going to have on sponsors. I mean, if you can prove to the sponsors that you're getting the best of the best, then that's awesome. But if you're just getting less,
Yeah.
less is not going to make them happy.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
and there's
Yes.
the rub.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly. And it's funny, Scott, you mentioned that because we were really worried about our sponsorship when we hit pause back in January. We had met our budget for that. And then when it came to replaying it at the end of March, we actually have exceeded the budget there. They came back, and then we lost a couple, but we gained few, to compensate for that. And actually, we are looking good. I know it's our team is very good at that. And so they did a great job of that business development side of things. But yeah, that I could see that. Yet I know also, Scott, that if you have a smaller, more focused event, kind of what Sharon was talking about, I think, as far as, differentiating the content, then for maybe positions or titles or the lower levels, that you might be able to find specific sponsors for those roles, that work well for that. So, for us, we have, if we did like a meet conference, we do one that's in collaboration with another organization, but, we're going to find sponsors that are focused just on meat rather than, retail in general. So I guess you just have to dig deeper into the long tail of whatever the industry is to find those,
No, I
Yeah,
think that's absolutely true, Dan, because that's the way we're looking at things too right now. So the really big events that we had to do virtual, and we've been told now, like, if it's going virtual, we want nothing to do with it, right? So they're now
Right.
back to going live, which is great.
Mhm.
But we're still, we struggle to get some sponsors because to some degree there are people who are like, oh, is this going to change? Are we going to have someone decide some new rule, and throw the rug out from under us again?
Mm.
So this is one of the things we're dealing with, because we've had a lot of restrictions on this side of the country. So,
Yeah.
and there's you talk to people, I'll tell you something around, they're like, "Oh, what if?" Right.
Right.
And here's an interesting one too. So we do have some major American companies that have been members, some for years and some more recent. And some of them quit just this past year because their companies wouldn't let their sales reps go out to any events. You had to get permission to go,
Mhm.
even for coffee with somebody, right?
Wow.
So I'm waiting to see how many of them come back now, as they don't need their permission to go for coffee with somebody. I'm like, right? Because none of this is charted territory of any kind.
Yeah. Right.
Unless I'm missing something. But I was just saying to the board, I'm waiting to see what happens now, right? I
Yeah.
mean, you can plan for certain things, fair enough. But other things, like, I'm sorry, every time there's a new rule or regulation imposed, it's like, oh,
Right.
okay. So,
Yeah.
and I did not know this about some of these big companies. I won't lie to you. It seems to be like, what? You got to get permission to go for coffee. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, then. So
It's all that's their risk management departments,
Yeah.
on the liability side.
And
Yeah.
also the
So we'll
CFO
see.
cutting T&E budgets.
Sure.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. because again, they, you know, a lot lost money over the last 2 years, so they're trying to pinch pennies where they can.
Yeah, except that, like, no offense, but one of the ones that I was chatting with, I will admit, over coffee. See, you
Uh-huh.
made $4 billion last year.
Right, right.
How, why would you, like, why cancel? But that was the reason why. Management, it's just this, like, this high level, short-sighted thinking that goes
Yeah.
on.
It,
And
you
yet
know,
we were still doing stuff.
yeah, and you know, the point that you made also about verbiage, you know, I think there's that's where things are not as normal as they used to be. You guys can
Yeah.
still hear me. I got a warning here.
Yeah.
That's where the normalness is not, where depending on where who you want to participate, you know, and how much you want to participate, there's going to be a decision whether it's virtual versus in person or hybrid. You know, so we have a couple events, committee meetings and things like that at our upcoming conference, that one of them we're making hybrid because we want that participation and engagement, even if they're not able to make the event in person. And then the other one is only in person because it is more of a board level committee that's, you know, we really need you to be there in person to support the event, but also to have these conversations in person. So it's an option that we didn't have 2 years ago, right? 2 years ago, no one would really even think that those committee meetings could be virtual or hybrid. They were just like, you need to, you know, have your, you know, person here for that meeting, and that's just the requirement. Yeah, and these days it's and even like, you know, ASAEs, you know, back then they were trying to figure out, well, do these virtual events will they get credit for their CAE points? You know, if they come to these virtual events, because before then you wouldn't. You know, you wouldn't have any CAE points, or you would have very low points if it's virtual versus an in-person event. So hopefully policies and kind of those policies and protocols, procedures have changed well enough to be sustainable on both sides, you know, the members and the organizations.
We're, you know, we're prepared for people. Why can't we have a hybrid conference? Because we're a $1 billion organization and we don't have that kind of staffing or budget. That's why.
Sure.
But we have, you know, we have our chapters, and part of our chapter agreement is they have to host 4, not very many, 4 in-person events each year, because their purpose is to provide that local networking that
right,
right? Unless we hired someone and did it ourselves. So we're like, provide that local networking. Now, of course, the last 2 years, it's been really hard, and some switched over virtual, and a lot of them are and we had the board vote and keep extending that these virtual events can count towards their 4 required events a year. That's been great, but we are so waiting for all of them to go, why can't they continue to be? Well, you know, this is great. We've got all these people, and I'm going to continue, but also have the in-person as well, which is what I hope will happen, because to have that face-to-face, like we've been saying, is important, and they do appreciate that. But, you know, we've got 3 members in Idaho, and they're part of, you know, our chapters cover a huge geographical area. So virtual's been great for some people.
Yeah, and I understand where you're coming from with that, but it also makes me think, when you mentioned that, is that, you know, my wife's the president of the PTO, and our virtual PTO meetings have been much more well attended than the in-person, right? And it's just local; they're just down the street here. But even those few minutes of having to get to the school for the meeting, or, you know, just out of their schedule, it's much easier for them to just jump online or on their phone and participate. And from a membership, you know, from a membership director's point of view, that's wonderful. You know, they're engaged, they're participating, there's some value there, and we might actually be able to get them to volunteer and do other things. So you know, regardless of how small the proximity is, you know, virtual is still, I think, a very viable way of gaining engagement.
Yeah, we're definitely getting, you know, participation that we wouldn't have had. So somehow harness
I see where that works completely. But when you're doing like we were having a meeting tomorrow, and one person said, oh, is it going to be virtual because they're going to be, you know, they're in Toronto versus Vancouver? I'm like, Yeah, how do you do like a council meeting and have like this camera, like going, it's impossible to divert your attention versus say an educational thing where you know in advance you're going to be doing this and this and this, whereas this is a spontaneous meeting where anything could happen.
Yeah.
We may not even follow an agenda for all I know, right?
Mhm.
And it's
Right.
like, but I can see where, if you've got parents, I mean, you've got childcare issues, this, that, and the other thing.
Yeah.
It makes sense to offer that.
Right.
Right?
Exactly. It's a really good
Whereas-
point.
We're gonna do one of our board meetings. We've been doing them. It's kind of funny because we used to get when our board was 41 people, we'd have them together in person. And then we restructured to a much more manageable board. And we still got together in person like a year. And then we started doing it in person, but in our office building, which was much, much less expensive and more fun, to be honest. And then we learned that the virtual works. It's kind of hard. It's kind of hard to stay focused, but for a long period of time, they're not all day meetings, but I think they're learning that they really can accomplish quite a bit. And then we're about to do a virtual or a hybrid rather. I can't remember. Some organization is letting us use their conference room that's already set up for hybrid. So my impression is there's like cameras everywhere. And so, you can see the people on the screen and the people can see all the individual people. So we couldn't do that. We couldn't do that well at my office, but this organization's already set up for it. So there's a good hybrid, and this is just a board meeting, not a conference,
Yeah.
but a good hybrid takes some investment.
Yeah.
Exactly.
It'll be worth it versus getting everyone together. I don't know.
Yeah. And before we kind of wrap things up, it's a great conversation. I see the same thing happening, Sharon, with our board meeting. Like one of our members actually like got a broken leg, not COVID, but
Yeah.
a broken leg, and they were like, well, we want you to participate, and they want to participate, so we'll bring you in virtually. And how often is that going to happen? If someone does have COVID or something where they just can't make it, but they could call in. I mean, we were doing that years ago for some of our board meetings,
Yeah.
but nowadays it's just much easier and should be just kind of given as an option. So
But see, again, that's something with a very specific focus, right?
Mhm.
And this is
Yeah.
where I think we're going to start feeling our way around in that regard.
Yeah.
So what we're doing tomorrow is a regular council meeting. It's here, it's not too far away, good location and so on. It's hard to then say, oh, let's do some part of it virtual. It's very difficult when everybody wants to meet with all these salespeople want to meet in person. Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
Yeah.
But then on the other hand, sometimes for the membership committee, it is easier to say, hey, listen, we'll do something virtual.
Yeah.
At 4:00 and stuff. But the idea of meeting people online, I think that's kind of faded now. I think now dealing with organizations like ourselves where we have to pride ourselves on great events where people get to meet. This is how business is done. You have to meet people.
Well, especially in your business, the organization,
Yeah.
the business that your organization represents, like I said, the big home builders, when you have a conference, they're building homes within the conference center. I mean, that you can't do that a lot, very much
Yeah.
virtually. So that's
Yeah,
tough.
very hard to sell, facades and things online.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Kind of have to see it, touch it, feel it. So
Yeah.
just say.
Well, thanks, everybody.
thank
We'll wrap
you.
it up, and it's great to see you all, and appreciate you showing up this month, and we'll have it again next month. I think it's on the 19th of April, if I remember my dates correctly. Let me check really quick.
Sounds right.
Yeah, the 19th is the third Tuesday, and bring your
Nice to see
questions then,
everybody.
and we'll have a great month. Hopefully, you get some good spring weather too.
Yep.
Thanks,
Bye,
Dan.
everybody.
Okay,
Have a
thank
good
you all.
day.
See you
Bye,
guys.
Take care,
Good to
everybody.
see everyone.
Bye bye.